Hi guys, Baghdad here. I heard about this new trend and decided it was about time I shared my story with you, so please enjoy this Draw My Life video by me, Baghdad. I was founded in 762 as the capital of the Abbasid dynasty. I was named Medina al-Salam, which means City of Peace, but my friends just call me Baghdad. I also get the nickname the Round City because I was built with circular walls. I was built on the flat banks of the Tigris and spread to both the east and west bank, and because I was so close to the Euphrates, I was an ideal spot for a city because my agriculture could support a large population. I was promoted when Al-Mansur, the second caliph of the Abbasid dynasty, chose me to be the capital because I was at the center of the empire and strategically placed between the overland Silk Road trade. I don't want to brag, but for the next 500 years, I was the most significant cultural center of the Arab and Islamic world, and one of the greatest cities in the world. In fact, my life is considered the Islamic Golden Age. In the 8th and 9th century, I was considered the richest city in the world at this time, with trade from China, India, and East Africa. Under Caliph al-Mamun, I was also the center of a revival of ancient Greek works, hospitals and health, and astronomy and poetry. Most people who stayed with me were Muslim and Arab, but I had a lot of friends with diverse backgrounds, including Kurds, Armenians, people of Indian, Afghan, or Turkish origin, and I also welcomed Eastern Christian groups such as the Chaldeans and Assyrians, as well as Jewish communities. I was at the center of arts and literature that flourished throughout the Abbasid Empire. Poets like al-Rumi and singers were popularized on my streets and in theater.
One of the most significant beautiful buildings I have is the House of Wisdom. Because I promote such religious tolerance, Muslims, Christians, and Jews are able to work collaboratively together and produce valuable scholarship. In my House of Wisdom, texts originally composed in Persian, Sanskrit, Greek, Syriac, and Chinese were all eagerly translated into Arabic. Additionally, my caliphs funded and encouraged original innovations in mathematics, medicine, astronomy, physics, cartography, zoology, poetry, and more. A central location on the Silk Roads, I have a pretty big role in Eurasian trade. Through me, commodities like ivory, soap, honey, and diamonds were traded. My people made and exported commodities like silk, glass, tiles, and paper. It contained lots of Islamic architecture. For instance, the Abbasid Palace, built in the late 12th and 13th earlier century, the Mustanyana Madrasa, an Islamic law college built by the Caliph al-Mustansir, and the Sarwardi Mosque, built in 1234. Indeed, tons of my architecture exemplify Islamic styles in mosques, bazaars, and public baths. Commonly used materials for building were brick and stucco as a sheeting material. A standard mosque included minarets, domes, and pointed arches. The arabesque, or repeated interlaced stylized geometric motif, came into being in this period of my life. Because I was deeply associated with the religion Islam, many of my gender roles are influenced by the Quran. This includes the forbidding of female infanticide, the promotion of women's education, the right to own and inherit property, and the right to a divorce, good for women's rights. I was also a delightful place for visitors. Listen to what 10th century historian Yaqut al-Hamwawi from Lost History pages 60 to 61 said about me. The city of Baghdad formed two vast semicircles on the right and left banks of the Tigris, 12 miles in diameter. The numerous suburbs, covered with parks, gardens, villas, and beautiful promenades, and plentifully supplied with rich bazaars and finely built mosques and baths, stretched for a considerable distance on both sides of the river. In the days of its prosperity, the population of Baghdad and its suburbs amounted to over 2 million. The palace of the caliph stood in the midst of a vast park several hours in circumference, which beside a menagerie and aviary comprised an enclosure for wild animals reserved for the chase. The palace grounds were laid out with gardens and adorned with exquisite taste, with plants, flowers, and trees, reservoirs, and fountains, surrounded by sculpted figures. On this side of the river stood the palaces of the great nobles.
Okay, now to the rough part of my life. Neglect to my irrigation caused crop failure, beginning with the mid-9th century. A civil war destroyed much of my city. That was an especially bad year. From 836 to 892 CE, I was taken over by the Turks. The Caliph al-Mu'tasim introduced non-Muslim Berber, Slav, and Turkish mercenary forces into his personal army. Though these troops were converted to Islam, the base of imperial unity through religion was gone. In 1258, the Mongols arrived, hungry for my sweet trade. Hulagu, grandson of Chinggis Khan, what a military leader. Using palisades, ditches, and siege engines, the Mongols completely sacked me. Unfortunately, much of my irrigation system and infrastructure was ruined, and my caliph was killed. Death tolls range from 90,000 to 1 million people. Notably, Hulagu protected my Nestorian Christian community, showing Mongolian values of tolerance. Things would never be the same. Rest in peace. Don't get me wrong, Mongolian rule had some benefits. The Mongols brought their political structures and culture, including gender roles where women have property rights and influence in decision-making. Additionally, the Mongolian resettlement program allowed my brightest minds to interact with scholars across the empire. In 1538, I became ruled by the Sunnite Ottoman Empire under Sultan Suleiman I. As you can see, I had an identity crisis and a lot of issues. Things got a little worse under the Ottomans, and eventually the British. I'm still struggling, but my therapist says I will eventually get through it. Anyways, thanks for watching and listening to my story.
Smash that like button with your forehead and stay tuned.